You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 103. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Hi everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today I have a treat in store for you. You're going to be hearing from one of my clients, Emma, and her journey to transforming her relationship with alcohol. You're going to hear her talk about how her life has changed in so many ways. How she has gone from having alcohol play a rather large part of her life to not really thinking about it at all. And you're going to hear about her renewed sense of control that she has on her life. It is so good because you're also going to hear how this time of year, yes, Thanksgiving, festive season, run up to Christmas, New Year, all of it, how this is a brilliant time of year to make this decision and end the struggle with alcohol for once and for all. You are going to love it. But first, a quick reminder about Black Friday. If you resonate with my approach and if you want to stop the struggle with alcohol, now is the time to take action. Not just because you'll get a deal on my pricing, and who doesn't love a good bargain, but because really working with me will get you to your goal quicker. And as Emma is about to tell you, this time of year really is a most brilliant time to go all in on yourself and to learn how to do this. Now, there are limited spots at the Black Friday price for a limited time. I have already released details of this to my email list. I'm already talking with people about filling the spots, and I'm not going to go public with the pricing or anything on this until later this week, until we hit official Black Friday time. So if you want a chance of getting your hands on a slot to coach with me at a Black Friday price, now is the time to get on my list. To do this, you go to 90dayslater.co/3 things, as in the number 3 things, and that will get you on my list, which means you'll get all the Black Friday details ahead of the crowd, and I will also send you a free gift as well. You'll get my video course, 3 key things to get your drinking under control. Right, so go and do that. Go straight away and sign up for the list before you forget. And then I want you to come back. I want you to sit back and relax and listen to Emma's experience. And remember, this could be you too. So thank you, Emma, for coming back. It's lovely to see you again. First, could you maybe tell me a little about yourself and how would you describe your drinking before we started working together?
So I am 44. I've got 2 children and a very busy job and a very busy husband. So life is quite fast-paced, running around, prioritizing everybody else apart from myself, not much time to relax. And we drink alcohol at home, and I think I grew up in a household where alcohol was drunk every single day, and I've never really seen moderation, and therefore not found practicing moderation very easy myself. So over the years, having had some traumatic incidents happen in my family, alcohol had become a nice, easy softener to my evenings, and I found my unit consumption just going up and up and up, and it's too easy. I found it too easy to open a bottle of wine and just finish it without really understanding or thinking about it, and I'd reached a point where it was making me feel uncomfortable. It was making me feel negatively about myself, I would wake up in the night because alcohol disturbs my sleep, thinking, oh, crumbs, I've drunk another bottle of wine tonight. You know, I said I wasn't going to drink the whole bottle, and, you know, I've drank the bottle again, and, you know, that's 3 bottles this week, and I'm just such a terrible mum, and, you know, I'm going to have, like, I just would have all these negative thoughts about myself and being irresponsible, just beating myself up basically. And it was just a cycle, because then I don't drink in the week, so I'd spend all week saying, right, this weekend I'm going to be better, I'm not going to drink as much, and, you know, and then I would get to the weekend, drink exactly what I said I wasn't going to drink, you know, and then wake up again thinking, oh, crumbs, I'm a terrible mom, I'm doing it on Monday, you know, rinse and repeat. And it just got to the point where it was just making me feel really sad and anxious and uncomfortable and just really horrible about myself. And it was making me sad. And this thing that, you know, everybody does around you that is supposed to be all, you know, we'll have a glass of this, we'll have a glass of that. I then found it really difficult to allow myself to enjoy the 5-6 units, few glasses of wine, whatever, that I would drink outside of the home if I went to meet people for a meal or something, because on a Friday night and a Saturday night, and more often than not on a Sunday night, I would drink a bottle of wine or a bottle and a half of wine, and those two things combined, then I'd feel really bad about the single glass of wine I had in the restaurant on the Tuesday night because of everything else. And so it was just governing my life and ruling my life, because I just couldn't get out from under this perpetual feeling of being horrible. And that's how I felt about myself. I felt like I was letting everybody down, letting my children down, and letting myself down, and that I couldn't stick to anything. Or, you know, why could everybody else have 2 glasses of wine and put the cork back in the bottle and then forget about it? Like, why can't I do that? And, you know, yeah, I just couldn't get on top of it.
So when you reached out to me, why did you decide it was time to change in that moment?
Because I think I felt so out of control, and I had been bereaved, and I felt that I'd reached a point where I needed to do something, because I just felt terrible about myself all of the time, and it was making me feel unwell. And I have 2 beautiful children. I've got a lovely husband, and, you know, we have a nice life, and I want to enjoy it without feeling terrible about myself all of the time. You know, I'd noticed that I put on weight. I was just anxious, and my sleep was bad, and, you know, I'd reached a point where I was thinking, you know, perimenopause is looming and starting to affect my hormones, and I really need to start taking better care of myself. And I found a forum online where people were discussing having similar issues to me, right? Sort of being, you know, high performers, comfortable lives, but just drink too much wine. And how on earth how do I access this? How do I get on top of it? And then I saw somebody had recommended you, and I saw a post that you'd written, and it resonated with me, this feeling of, actually, you can retake this control, and it isn't inevitable, and you have a say in this, and you are, you know, a life with less alcohol is not boring and miserable and, you know, feeling like you're deprived all the time. And it piqued my interest in the fact that I really had thought that there was only one way, and that way was no alcohol again ever. And I had to say, you know, I'm an alcoholic, or I need to go to a meeting, and I didn't feel that that's where I was placed. I felt that I was sort of somewhere in the middle, but I didn't know by myself how to interpret that, and therefore to think positively about it, to think positively about having that change.
So, and I remember very clearly, so we had our first session on the 1st of December. Now, before you tell me about that, how were your Christmases and the party season prior? How did they usually roll out?
So Christmas was always something that I looked forward to, but dreaded in equal measure because um, I knew that I was going to drink much, much more. I knew that my nights would be fuller because I like to drink wine and I drink it at home. Um, and because I have a big tolerance for it, I had put myself into a routine where the way that I controlled my alcohol intake was to not drink during the week. But that kind of goes out the window in December because there's this party on a Tuesday or there's that party on a Monday. And that kind of, for me, in this rules that I'd kind of implanted in my head, just meant that that went out the window. And then I had the consumption in the week went up and the consumption at the weekend went up. And, it was lots of parties, lots of wine. And I suffer terribly from the fact that because I'm so tired all of the time from running around, busy job, busy kids, I suffer terribly from memory loss if I've been drinking heavily. And so what would happen is I'd go to a party and I wouldn't remember leaving, or I would, not remember going to bed at home because I'd been out, and then I'd come back, have a few more glasses of wine and go to bed. And not through massive levels of consumption, but just through the combination. And what that then did is catapult me into this terrible, anxious feeling of, oh my goodness, what did I say to them? What did I do? Did I listen to what people were saying? Was I drunk? Did I embarrass myself? Did I embarrass my husband? And all of these things were just negative thought processes. And I'd speak to my friends and be like, oh, what a lovely night. Oh, did you get home okay? Oh no, it was lovely. And I hadn't done anything wrong at all as such, but I just had no concept of that. And it made me feel really uncomfortable and embarrassed. And I just ended up feeling so drained by the end of December for this, constant like, oh God, right. And I would find myself thinking, right, it's only a few more days of December to go, and then it's done. And I just think, what a ridiculous thing. Like, this is a time where we come together to be with people that we actually really truly want to spend some time with. Why am I wishing it over just because, oh gosh, only a few more bottles of wine to go, and then we can, we're back to normal. And I just felt like this passive person just bobbing along in this whole thing, like I had no control over it. And that was what I desperately wanted to get out of this cycle. I really am fed up of dreading Christmas.
Okay. Brilliant. So like I said, we had our first session on the 1st of December, and I know you had decided, you had paid, right? That's the decision made, and you were ready to do this. And yet I do remember, Emma, that you said, would it be all right to start in January? You were kind of a little bit nervous. I remember you assured me this was no reflection on your commitment, but there were some hesitations there. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Yeah, definitely. And I do remember, because I was thinking, oh gosh. And immediately I was thinking, oh, she's she's going to make me not drink, and it's going to be really difficult in December. Like, how do I tell people? And people are going to, I've got my Christmas party and I've got a wine tasting and a cheese evening, and how is that going to work? And oh gosh, I've got this party and I've got to go out for drinks with them. And no, this is just too much. Maybe it's easier in January, but then I don't really drink in January. And so I ended up in like this whole thought process. And actually, then you sent me another email and said, just have a think about starting in December for all of these reasons. And actually, I then thought, no, she's right, because, and I remember you saying you can still go to your wine tasting evening and enjoy it, but you'll just go with a slightly different viewpoint. And it's absolutely true. And that kind of gave me that push to say, right, if this lady is committed to helping me, and I'm going into a really busy period of high consumption, well, if she thinks it's a good idea and she knows what she's talking about, well, I think I should trust her, and I think I should do this. And I've said I'm going to do it, so let's do it. And I was desperate not to repeat a particular party that I'd gone to, and I'd drunk too much, and I ended up sharing a taxi home with somebody that I didn't really know, and I couldn't find my key in my handbag. My husband had to let me in the door, and I was so embarrassed. And I was thinking, do you really want to go? And that it's an annual party. Do you really want to go to that party again and not be able to find your key in your handbag? No, you don't. So, okay, let's do this. And that's kind of what spurred me on to think, okay, let's do this. I'm in.
I do remember, and I remember planning for that party, and I remember you planned 8 glasses of wine. That was the plan. And I remember you said you weren't really happy about planning that number, right? It wasn't a number that you kind of liked. But in the past, and we talked about it, in the past, you would have just not planned, and you would have drunk based on what other people did, or who knows what, kind of crossing your fingers. So tell me about that experience of planning the 8, drinking the 8, that's what we had, and then but how that was different to just going in and not having a clue, and then, you know, that whole thing.
So, I mean, before I would have probably, you know, had a couple of glasses of wine here, maybe, or one certainly while I was getting ready. And then I would have drunk from the minute I arrived at the party until the minute I left, because that's what you do. That's just in my perception of parties. That's what you do. You arrive, you drink, and then you drink until you leave, and then you go home. And I'd never given any thought to structuring my alcohol intake at a party and putting together kind of a toolkit of tactics to ensure that my consumption stayed where I had agreed that it was going to stay. And actually, it was probably, it's one of my best memories of this whole process, actually, was that party, because I really have truly felt as a person out of control, and a passive observer in my consumption of alcohol. And actually, it was the one time that I really felt visibly and emotionally in charge of what I was doing, probably one of the first times. And I arrived and I concentrated on what was in my glass, and I really enjoyed it. And I spoke to people, and I put my glass down on the side, and I put it out of my reach, and I went to the toilet probably more purposely than I would have done. I made sure that I had a glass of water at the same time, and I would sip my water and then sip my wine, and really, you know, hand the thought process over to the conversation that was going on around me, rather than thinking about, oh, you know, my glass is nearly empty, I wish this person would stop talking to me so I can go and get a refill. Like, when's it appropriate to interrupt them and think, okay, I'm just going to go and top my glass up because it's running out? And I cared much less about what was in my glass and what the people around me were talking about. And one of the people there had been through a really sensitive time, and it was nice to sit and talk to her without that background noise in my head of, right, it's going to be time for, or somebody topping up the glasses, you know, oh, I'm going to need a top up soon. And going off to the toilet, and I remember sitting there thinking, I've only had 3 glasses of wine so far, and it's nearly 9 o'clock. This is perfect, you know, like, go me. And then coming out of the toilet feeling really enthused and like, this is brilliant, I can do this. And, you know, my taxi wasn't booked until midnight, and I've got 5 glasses left. Like, I've got loads. And it made me feel positive about it, rather than this amount that, you know, well, my taxi's coming and how am I going to be, or well, what am I going to drink before then, or is somebody going to, you know, come out with some cocktail they've made, or because I'd already got in my head that I was going to say no, because that's not what I wanted to do. I'd got my plan in my head, and I wanted, my overall feeling was to get in that taxi and to have my key in my hand and to open my own front door and go to bed and not feel embarrassed because I was sharing a taxi home with the same person, and it's quite a long way away. I want to talk to this person in the taxi, and I do not want to be intoxicated when I do. And I enjoyed it so much. And actually, I finished my 8th glass, and it wasn't quite time for us to go home. And that was uncomfortable, but it was okay. And shocker, nothing happened. The world didn't collapse because I couldn't have another glass of wine. And I finished my water and our taxi came, and I remember emailing you from the taxi going, just so you know, I'm in the taxi, I've got my key, I'm not drunk, I'm okay. And like, it makes me happy remembering it now, because then the feeling that I had the next day when I woke up of, oh, I didn't embarrass myself. I'm not worried to check the group chat and see, who did what and who went where, and, did I say anything? Was I, was I personable, or did I, yeah, it was just a really positive feeling to come away with. And that was quite early on in December, and it kind of spurred me on and gave me a real sort of springboard into it, and thinking, actually, I can do this.
So what was your overall experience of Christmas? So we've talked about that party, sort of just generally the whole thing. Was it, did doing this get in the way of you having fun and family time and all that? Or what was it like, and what did it teach you?
It didn't get in the way of anything. In fact, it massively contributed to it, because I felt like a new woman. I was in charge, I was in control. I think personally for me, when I'm in control, I feel much calmer. And I had carved out, as part of this process, I'd carved out more time for myself to think about my plan and what I was going to drink, where I was going to go, what I was doing. And I didn't feel rubbish in the morning because I drank too much wine. Therefore, I enjoyed my weekends with my children when they were waking me up really super early. That wasn't a problem. I slept so much better. Like, I genuinely feel this has given me the gift of sleep. And that was so much better. I really look forward to every occasion with my plan and challenging myself, and and it completely changed my perception of what's in my glass compared to where am I, who am I speaking to, and am I having a good time. It took the focus away from that, whereas I would always be, particularly, I'm probably a heavier drinker than some of my friendship group. Sometimes if I went to their house, I'd be concerned about, am I going to run out of wine before they do? And should I? I can't ask for a top up before them because I don't want to be rude. They're hosting, and I should just sit and wait. And all of those thoughts and things went out of my head. I didn't need to worry about that, because I already knew I was going to have X glass of wine, and that was it, and that was fine, because that's what I planned, and that's what I had thought was an acceptable number of drinks.
Yeah. And what about your thoughts about this year's Christmas?
I'm really looking forward to it, and I haven't given a single iota of thought about any drinking occasions at all. I literally haven't. I have got things in my diary that we're doing, and I'm looking forward to them. I haven't even thought about, oh gosh, what about this, or what about that, or are we taking alcohol with us, or is it am I going to drive, haven't even given it a minute's thought. And it is so nice to have that headspace of, it's not a thing that I need to worry about at all. In no more than the fact that I'm not hosting this Christmas. I'm at a family member's house, and I know I'm in charge of dessert, and I will think about that at some point. And that's all I have to think about. I haven't thought about how much wine I can take, how much wine is appropriate to take with me, and
yeah,
I've had just space from it. I'm looking forward to it for all of the right reasons, to spend time with my family and my children, and freed up from the negative thoughts about myself. Like, I'm genuinely really looking forward to it.
Brilliant. And one of the things I remember we spoke about a lot as we did the work was urges or cravings, some people call them, and how your opinion of them changed in the process. Maybe you could talk about that a little.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the things. And I remember like laughing with you, because it sounds so ridiculous now, but I genuinely, it had never occurred to me that when I got a craving for a glass of wine and it pops into my head, oh, I fancy a glass of wine, that I could not have one. Like, it just because I want one doesn't mean that I should have one. And I remember saying to you, it's kind of like every now and again I think, oh, I really fancy fish and chips.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't jump in my car, drive to a fish and chip shop on a Tuesday night, go and get fish and chips and then bring them home and sit and eat them, because it's just a fancy that comes into my head. And I'd never, ever stopped and paused and thought about a craving or an urge to give it the understanding that actually it will go away, it will pass, and actually it can pass quite quickly. And again, I think I just got so caught up in being this passive part of alcohol in my life. It sounds silly to me now, sort of saying it out loud again, but I'd never ever sat with a craving. If I fancied a glass of wine, I'd go and open the wine, if as long as it was a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday or sometimes a Thursday, because that's just what I did.
So one of the things, Emma, I know that we spoke about, and actually a lot of people tell me one of the reasons why they want to do something about their consumption is because of their fear about their health, right? We don't always check into it. We kind of are worried about it. We don't want to think about it, but we kind of do want to think about it. And I know this was something that we spoke about in terms of your dread of that. So tell us a little bit about what happened there.
So my family history is that my parents both heavy drinkers, and that had concerned me. My mum passed away from an undiagnosed cancer, and that set off in me an anxiety of my health, worrying about being here for my children and taking care of myself. And I eat relatively healthily, I exercise, I practice all of the good things apart from my alcohol consumption. And that was the one thing that bothered me, is that I do all these things to keep myself healthy and do the right things, but I know I drink too many units. I drink probably double the recommended government guidelines each week, and that made me really uncomfortable. And so I started having private blood tests done through an online company every 6 months, but I found myself postponing the test because I wasn't brave enough to kind of think, oh gosh, what are they going to say this time, because they would always start with this health bulletin of the key points, and again, I'm a healthy person, so it was generally all very good, everything's normal, but they would always say, please be reminded of the government guidelines. We would suggest that you limit your alcohol consumption. And again, my liver tests were all in normal levels, but they were certainly on the higher end. So it was something they would draw my attention to. And again, just seeing that written down would really, really worry me. And I would think, oh gosh, I'm doing all these things to protect myself, and then I'm drinking too much and it's affecting my health. And I was so worried. And then I got to the point where I would postpone these tests, because I thought, well, I don't want to know. I know I've been, I know I've had a bad few weeks. I've had at least 30 units every week for the last 4 or 5 weeks. No, I can't possibly do that test. And it was silly, because I was doing this to kind of be more knowledgeable and take better care of myself, but yet I was avoiding it because I was worried. And I was thinking, why am I doing this thing that worries me so much? And actually, probably one of the happiest things that happened for me was that towards the end of my process with you, I had one of these private blood tests, and they didn't even mention it. There was no in the health bulletin at the top, they didn't mention anything, because actually my levels had returned to smack bang normal, where everything should be, and they didn't even mention it. And it was just like, for me, that kind of made my chest swell. I was like, oh, see, nothing to see here, move along. Like they didn't even feel they needed to comment on it, and it just gave me such a sense of relief, and almost now you see, that's why you're doing it. That's why you're doing it, because you are regaining that control, because we only have a certain amount. And actually it's made me feel so much better, and it's removed all of those negative thoughts about myself and what I'm doing.
Yeah, and it's I remember that day, and it's kind of like, that's like the official paperwork saying this is good, these are the top marks, but as you say, the negative feelings and how we get there, and how your experience of life, I mean, that's the thing I think that's come across here. So Emma, thank you so much for coming on, for talking so openly about this, to help dispel any sense of shame that people might have about requesting help with their alcohol consumption, especially because you said at the top that you saw people who were kind of enjoying it, and then it was like, well, if you're not doing it, it's AA, and you were in the middle, right? As I know many people are. So what would you say to somebody who's listening to this podcast now, who's perhaps where you once were, who's worried, will this work, who's worried, will it be worth it, who's worried about just the whole concept of doing the process with me? What would you say to them?
I would say absolutely do it. It is so much more simple than you think. I really honestly thought it was going to be this complicated, difficult thing that I was going to have to add into my already busy schedule and time, and I'd spend so much time thinking about it. And actually it's been the complete opposite. It's removed so much thought, time, effort, consideration, and thinking about drinking is no longer anything that I do, which is fantastic, and it's benefited me in so many ways. And I remember a friend of mine came over, I hadn't seen her for a while, and she came over shortly towards the end of our sessions, and she said, "You look amazing, whatever you're doing, keep doing it." And I just, oh, that's fantastic, that's brilliant. And I thought, well, people do notice, and my face has changed shape, like I've lost weight in lots of places, and I just feel so much better. I feel in control, and I feel like a worthy person again, and somebody that is in control of their drinking rather than the drinking being in control. And you're absolutely right. I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and that's nothing embarrassing to say. It's really, it's really common, and I wish more people would talk about it and realize that actually you can do something about it. It's not a given. You are, you can, and it's much more simple than you think.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Emma, for your time, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas with all the wonderful things you're doing. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on here.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around, and they don't miss out on life. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.